We're happy to have you guys. I'm Becky Coletta. I'm the president of the Old Colony Planning Council. And we have with us Jason DeRozier, who's the senior planner for housing and public engagement for OCPC, who I think you've been talking to before this. And welcome. Are we recording at this point? Jason, do you know if we're recording?
Yes, we are recording.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan.
All this stuff will be cut out, and we can probably, I'll open the Zoom call now as 102. I'll open it and we can get started.
Okay, perfect.
Let me just go back to
Jason, it's already going.
Oh, it's all right. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll cut all this out so we can get started.
Okay, welcome to the Accessory Dwelling Unit in Practice, Resources, Best Practices, New Initiative presentation by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. We're very grateful for Claire Morehouse, who is the coordinator for the ADU program with EOHLC. Does anyone mind if I abbreviate that to HLC, Housing and Livable Communities?
That's totally fine.
I can't say the full mouthful. And we also have with us Roy Montoya, who's the legal counsel to HLC, who works on the ADU program as well as doing some other things. Jason, I'm wondering if you could just start us off by first introducing yourself and Old Colony Planning Council's role in sort of setting this up and bringing this information to our region.
Sure. So my name is Jason DeRozier. I'm the senior planner for housing and public engagement at Old Colony Planning Council. And we support the planning needs of 17 communities, which make up the Old Colony Planning Council region. And part of our work is to support various housing initiatives and projects in the region. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the exciting housing projects and initiatives that are currently underway at OCPC. So right now, OCPC is leading a coordinated set of planning efforts to help our communities meet local and regional housing needs. This includes several housing production plans, which serve as roadmaps for balanced, achievable housing strategies. We are actively working with the towns of Abington and Kingston on their updated housing production plans, and next year, in early 2026, we'll be launching new HPPs in Pembroke and Whitman. Each of these plans looks closely at the demographic shifts, housing affordability, land use constraints, and community priorities to guide responsible growth over the next 5 years. In addition to town-specific planning, we're also taking a broader view with a regional housing strategy for the municipalities of Avon, Brockton, and Stoughton. This project brings the three communities together to look at shared challenges such as housing supply, displacement pressures, infrastructure capacity, and opportunities for coordinated development. The strategy will outline regional goals as well as locally tailored actions, helping each town benefit from collaborative data-driven solutions. We're also supporting communities through zoning and code reform. In Whitman, OCPC is currently managing the creation of a new 40R smart growth zoning district, which will help encourage mixed income housing near existing infrastructure while unlocking new state incentive payments for the town. And in Abington, we will be conducting a comprehensive zoning code review, identifying inconsistencies, redundancies, and gaps to help the town modernize its regulations and better support housing development. All of these projects and many others are featured on the housing page of the OCPC website, which serves as a central hub for updates, reports, meeting materials, and public engagement opportunities. We encourage residents, town board members and council members and local partners to visit the page regularly to stay informed and participate in shaping the future of housing in our region. That can be found at oldcolonyplanning.org/housing-in-the-region. I'll put that in the chat as well. Together, these initiatives reflect OCPC's commitment to supporting vibrant, equitable, and sustainable communities across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was a lot in a short amount of time, so I appreciate that update. Housing is a big issue in our area, which is why we're very happy to have HLC here to talk about ADUs. Accessory dwelling units have been a very hot topic, and of all the issues that have come up, people seem most excited about ADUs. when we talk about adding some housing in our region. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Claire if you want to get started on your presentation. I don't know if it'll be Claire and Roy, but I know that Jason's going to handle the slides. Or I think Jason's going to handle the slides, and we'll get this.
That sounds great. Thank you, Becky. And I want to apologize for my spelling error. I apparently don't know how to spell council. So COUNCIL. Apologies for that. I actually caught that last night when I was looking over the slides. And then should have sent you that update.
I'm
Thank
sure
you so
no one
much.
would have noticed if you hadn't drawn attention to it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for getting that wrong. But I'm excited to be here with you all today. And Jason, if you want to, after you fix that, go into perfect, thank you. Go into presentation view. If that is helpful. I think slideshow. Yeah. And then yes, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you all for having us here today. We're very excited to be here and to chat about ADUs. And my name is Claire Morehouse. I am the Accessory Dwelling Unit Coordinator for UHLC, and I am joined by Roy Montoya, who is counsel for UHLC as well, and he'll help me answer any questions that you folks may have at the end of the presentation. We can go to the next slide. We're going to cover up some key highlights, a brief overview of the new statute and regulations, and then we'll jump into some FAQs that HLC has posted and cover some best practices around ADUs. We'll chat about resources that UHLC has that may be of relevance to you on ADUs, and finally wrap with some important updates coming out of HLC on some new initiatives around ADUs that we're excited to share with you all, and then finally wrap with any questions you may have. All right, so in the past, prior to the passage of the Affordable Homes Act, many municipalities, cities, and towns across the Commonwealth had their own ADU bylaws. They were of various sizes, various types of restrictions attached to them. And as a whole, the Commonwealth saw limited new units. And so with the passage of the Affordable Homes Act, ADUs are now by right under 900 square feet in single-family homing, in all single-family zoning districts across the Commonwealth. And I'll define that on the next slide. They are defined and coined as protected use ADUs in the new ADU regulations, which were promulgated by UHLC and went into full effect on February 2nd of this year, along with the statute. So we're over 6 months of the new ADU law and statute, our new ADU law and regs from being in full effect. Next slide. Thanks, Jason. So the ADU regulations were also added to Section 3 of the Zoning Act, so Chapter 48, as part of the Dover amendments. So ADUs are now a protected use along with other uses that the Commonwealth deems important enough to protect under Dover, because often these uses are challenging to develop in communities, and the legislature deems them as having and needing this extra level of protection. And so there's existing case law that covers the Dover amendments. So ADUs are a part of this, along with other important uses like childcare facilities, education, solar, so schools, churches, and now ADUs. Single family zoning district. So I mentioned this briefly before. So this is a term that's defined in our ADU regulations. And this means any district where single family homes are allowed either by right or by special permit. So regardless of how it's named, so it could be, for example, a commercial district where single family is allowed by special permit, or it could be a residential district where single families are by right, those are both examples of zoning districts where ADUs are now also by right, so long as they meet the definition of a protected use ADU. Principal dwelling is also defined in our regulation. Common misconception we get is that the principal dwelling, it can only be a single family home. This is not true. It includes any structure with a dwelling unit in a single family zoning district. So for example, could also be a duplex, a triple decker, a multi-unit. So if you picture a lot, if it's a lot in a single family zoning district, could have, for example, a triple decker on that lot would still be entitled to a protected use ADU. And on the right here, we like this graphic because it does a great job demonstrating that ADUs can take lots of different forms. Often we picture them as your typical detached ADU, but they can also be attached or within the principal dwelling as well, or a garage conversion, for example. Next slide. Here are some other high-level key highlights to the ADU regulations, and again, encourage folks to check out the ADU regulations in full, because these are just some key touch points that we wanted to highlight for you, but there's a lot of other important requirements in them. Wanted to call attention to dimensional standards. So cities and towns, municipalities, they can reasonably regulate protected use ADUs, so they can have setbacks, for example. However, those dimensional standards that must be applied to the protected use ADU cannot be more restrictive than either for a single family home, the type of principal dwelling on a lot. So for example, if it is that triple decker in that example I gave earlier, or accessory structure, whichever is more permissive for each of these standards. So for each land use control, for example, you would look at those three in your zoning table and select the most permissive standard. And that is what should be applied to the protected use ADU. For short-term rentals, we know that STRs are a big topic across the Commonwealth. The regulations and statute are very clear that this is a municipal choice, whether or not cities and towns want to decide to prohibit protected use ADUs from bringing short-term rentals. So this is something that can be decided on the local level in alignment with a locality's, for example, tourism goals, seasonal workforce goals, that sort of thing. Pre-existing ADUs. So essentially, if a pre-existing ADU, so prior to the passage of the Affordable Homes Act, so for example, any structure that was permitted as an ADU under one of these patchwork of ADU laws that I was speaking about earlier that existed prior to AHA, any of these structures, so long as they meet the definition and the standards of a protected use ADU, you cannot apply prior conditions. So any prior condition, for example, like an owner occupancy restriction, would be non-enforceable so long as that protected use ADU meets the definition of a protected use ADU. And a lot of this comes down to size. So does it meet the size requirements? Does it contain a kitchen, a sleeping area, and sanitation facilities? So it needs to meet the full definition of protected use ADU, and if so, prior conditions may not be continued. And then for address assignment, so all ADUs shall be assigned an address consistent with the most current address standards published by MassGIS. These standards are cross-linked on our website. We encourage folks to check them out. But essentially, each ADU should be assigned its own separate address. It is its own separate dwelling unit, and it's important that they are assigned an address in alignment with these standards for a multitude of reasons, but most primarily for safety reasons, to make sure if there's an emergency on the property that emergency workers are aware that there's a second dwelling unit on the lot. All right, so we wanted to start out by highlighting our model zoning resource, which we posted along with the regulations coming into full effect earlier this year. A lot of cities and towns are choosing to align their zoning with the new statute and regulation. This is a best practice that we encourage, and if cities and towns are choosing to do so, we hope that the model zoning can be an excellent resource for folks as they're drafting their bylaws. It goes through different portions and different considerations to think about, things to definitely do, things to proceed with caution, portions of requirements to definitely not apply to protected use ADUs. And it also has a checklist at the end to review with your drafted bylaw to make sure that everything is in compliance with the law. Cities and towns we are also encouraging cities and towns to review all existing bylaws that may conflict with the new ADU law and regulation. And this comes out of, we've had some cities and towns reach out to us about particular portions of their bylaws that they thought may conflict with the ADU law and regulations. And so we thought it would be a great idea to set this as a standard of best practice. Like, for example, one city in town had a particular site plan review process that they thought didn't meet the standard of the regulation, which states that any site plan review process applied to a protected use ADU must be clear and objective. And so they reached out to us, and we worked with them in the Attorney General's office for them to take a look at that. And so if any of you are working with a city or town that has a similar question, feel free to refer them to us. We'll often also loop in our partners at the AGO's office because they're the ones that are reviewing these bylaws and also doing pre-reviews for towns on any amended or updated ADU bylaws. Next slide. We wanted to just highlight a comprehensive, this is a non-exhaustive list of the FAQs that HLC has answered so far. We are really focusing on getting as much information out for planners, building officials, the general public as possible as they come in. And so all of the questions that you folks, especially planners, have asked have been extremely helpful and informative into what are the hurdles and what are the questions that have been coming up as we implement this new statute and regulations. So for example, we've answered questions on short-term rentals, we've answered on bedroom restrictions, minimum lot size requirements, manufactured housing comes up a lot, HOAs and separate or common utility connections. All of those are addressed on mass.gov/ADU. So we encourage you to check those out. Next slide. I wanted to highlight for you some additional resources. I did a brief overview of the regulations and statute, some key highlights, but we do have a full webinar that it's 45 minutes long. It goes through each portion of the law and regulations, and we talk about each portion of that. And especially if you're looking at the regulations, you're reading a portion, and you're thinking you'd like some guidance. I like to listen to people tell me instead of having to read sometimes. So it's a great resource for that. We also will be posting very soon a webinar that we recorded with Mass DEP on Title V and the intersection of ADUs. So we hope to have that up in the next few weeks. And then finally, I spoke about our ADU model zoning prior to, but if you are using that, I strongly encourage you to also watch the YouTube recording that we did when we launched that resource in conjunction with our partners at MAPC. And finally, we have some slides from CPTC session that we offered last spring as well that go over some other portions or go over the law and the regulation as well if you'd like to check those out. Just wanted to highlight the municipal law unit AGO decision lookup tool as well. We use it a lot here at HLC. For our team that's working with the AGO's office on all things ADUs, and we're tracking the new bylaws that are coming out. So the AGO's reviewing all bylaws amended or adopted by towns. They don't review it for cities, and they will post those decisions. And they're all publicly available on this lookup tool. And it's quite handy because you can actually do a search to text feature And so if you're interested in like a particular policy topic as it relates to ADUs, you could search for that, for example, parking, and then you could look for any decisions that they'll highlight the topic as ADUs as well. So it's a great resource as well for, in addition to HLC's FAQs, because the folks over at the Municipal Law Unit, they're working really hard and they're writing very comprehensive decisions where they opine on those decisions as well. So we encourage you to use this as an additional resource. So HLC, so our current efforts around ADUs, we're doing a lot. So this fall, we're doing our regional roadshow. So today is a part of that. So we're visiting all 13 RPAs, as well as all 4 building official associations across the state. We continue to host monthly office hours. Obviously, as I said, we're updating our FAQs. We're conducting interagency collaboration, specifically as I was speaking about with Mass DEP, as well as we have been working with DOER on stretch code information and guidance, as well as the Division of Insurance. And they just recently put out an FAQ that's cross-linked on our website on ADUs and things to expect as a property owner when it comes to insurance and ADU development. I already highlighted the Municipal Law Unit, but we work very closely with our partners at the EGO, and we're tracking decisions being published, and we're very appreciative of all the hard work they're doing on putting out those decisions so quickly. We're also continuing outreach and community education for all stakeholders in the ADU space. So this includes developers, homebuilders, contractors. We just recently put out a survey to financial and lending institutions to learn what types of products they're offering for ADU development. We know that there's work to do with assessors and appraisers around, what is the value of a home at sale, as well as how ADUs will impact property owners' property taxes. We also get a lot of inquiries from the real estate community and a lot of interest, and they're also at the front facing with this with property owners. So trying to bring all folks into the fold and create community education around protected use ADUs. And if you go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about, so I'll jump to the middle portion first, and a part of, so first of all, very exciting announcement. As part of the capital investment plan, we do have $5 million for ADU incentives for fiscal year 2026, as well as fiscal year 2027. So that's $10 million in total. And this will go towards supporting all ADU development, including pre-development and development costs. And we'll have a portion of TA and community education. So all of those stakeholders that I was just referring to, a lot of we're involved in the program design right now, along with Massachusetts Housing Partnership, which will be administering this program. So we're thinking about ways to have some of this money go towards that type of TA and bringing folks together around ADUs. So that is very exciting. HLC is also currently working on a ADU design challenge, which will be launching in mid-December. We're getting our website on this together right now, so hopefully that will be up and going in the next week or so. And the goal of this challenge is to solicit submissions for conceptual designs and floor plans for ADUs that will inspire ADU development, and property owners can eventually, at the close of the competition, HLC will take all the strong commissions and submissions and combine them into a type of format that property owners can select these floor plans and designs, and then potentially take those designs to a contractor or the designer that did the design, and use that to make it fit their property specific requirements, and eventually develop the ADU and just be a little bit farther along that pre-development process. Even, we know pre-development costs and development costs are so high for ADUs, so HLC is trying to do everything we can to bring that cost down. And then finally, around data collection, if you want to go to the next slide, Jason, I have a fun map. So EHLC put out a survey this summer, and we collected information from building officials across the Commonwealth for the first half of the year around ADUs and how it's been going since the law went into full effect with ADU approval and how many applications have been coming in. So we're excited to announce in the first half of the year, and again, there's some missing data. Not all building officials submitted, so it could be greater than this, but 550 ADUs were approved across the state, and about half of those were detached and the other half were attached or interior. And then across the state, there was also 844 total applications. So we're excited to share this data. You can check out the full data set, download it on mass.gov/edu, and we'll be putting out a survey for the second half of the year come January. So we're trying to track this as and continue to learn how we're getting towards the goal of 8,000 ADUs over the course of 10 years. So and finally, here is my email information, claire.morehouse@mass.gov. Feel free to send me any additional questions that have come up since the presentation. If you didn't get a chance to ask them, my email is always open. And again, your questions inform our FAQs. So if you think of anything, please shoot us an email. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'm just wondering, Jason, do people know, attendees know that they can put questions into the chat, or
Yep, we can
how
do
they
this.
can?
Yep, we can do this a couple of ways. People can use probably the Q&A function is best for questions.
Okay.
Or if anyone has any questions now, they can feel free to raise their hand, and I can see that and I can promote them to speak and ask their question.
Okay, so if anybody has questions, please either raise your hand or put your question into the Q&A, which is the little box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. I always have questions, so if until we get some questions from the audience, I'll have a couple questions to ask. Do we know how many towns have adopted their own bylaw at this point?
We don't have at least HLC doesn't have a comprehensive list. I do know that the AGO's office, they've been tracking both bylaws that they that are in the queue for them to review, as well as the ones that they've already reviewed. We're hoping to get a clear picture, I think around the year mark. We're hoping to work with them on getting a clearer picture of that, but I don't have a number to share with you at this time.
Roy, you look like you were going to say something.
No,
Because go ahead.
no, that's basically it. They're turning through them. You also don't need a bylaw for the law to be
That's where I was going to
effect.
ask next. Yeah. So what happens if there's no bylaw? Do you just go by the state standards?
The standards apply. So you're still required to apply the Dover analysis as in the regulations. You're still limited by all of the requirements in the regulations. You would apply the basics of state law. So like the building code, the fire code, all of that would just apply. The base definition of a protected use ADU would apply. You don't have to mention ADUs at all for this to still be effective in your community.
Okay. And what about setbacks? Do you just go by whatever the single family dwelling setback would be until the town comes up with a plan?
No, setbacks are a dimensional standard that's set on a sliding scale. I have to stop and think sometimes because it's a slightly different scale for each of the different provisions, but this was the one that's a sliding scale. So it's the more permissive of scale. And if it's a single family home, you look at accessory structures, so like sheds, gazebos, those kinds of things, or you look at the single family home, whichever is more permissive. And it's almost always going to be the accessory structure. If you're looking at something that isn't a single family home, like a triple decker or a multifamily building, then you add in one thing. You either do the more permissive, you have to do the more permissive of accessory structure, a single family home in the district, or whatever's required for the particular structure that you're looking at. So
Okay.
again, we're most often going to be at the accessory structure, but not always.
So my understanding was that you could only have, as of right, one ADU per property. So when you start talking about a property that already has multiple units on it, let's say you already have 2 units, the second unit isn't considered the ADU for purposes of this law?
No.
Can you help
So
us understand that a little bit?
yeah. So one of the sort of more technical aspects that we struggled with quite a bit, not in this context, but in other contexts, it becomes very important, which is that the ADU law is very specific, and the definition is contained in 40A. We didn't modify that in any way. We pulled it directly out of 40A. So the requirement that it be 900 square feet or not more than half the gross floor area, all of that comes from 40A. So things that don't meet the definition or weren't, especially things that weren't permitted that way, like a triple decker or a duplex, they don't meet the definition because they're not accessory structures. Like a duplex is two, even if you have 900 square feet in each unit, it's two 900 square foot units. And that creates, together, they create the principal dwelling.
Oh, okay. So you take the 2 units together and you can have half of the units together
Well,
as
they're
your
not
ADU.
well, no, they're not accessory to each other, right? They were never
Right.
built as accessory. They're not only half the size of the other one, kind of a thing. The principal dwelling is always been, that definition existed before this law. That's also
Okay.
partly why we ended up with some of the policy choices that were made around what is a principal dwelling. It was never limited to single family historically, and it isn't, there's nothing in the law that actually limits it to single family. Principal dwelling has always been that principal structure on the
Okay.
lot. So the
Okay.
triple decker is 3,000 square feet, then you can go up to 900 square feet, no more than half, whichever is less, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I just popped the definition for principal dwelling in the chat. Very keenly, like Roy was saying, it's the structure, not the dwelling unit. So it can contain multiple dwelling units. It could be a multifamily, and that lot is still entitled to one protected use ADU. But Keely, it doesn't just need to be a single family.
The because you asked, and I find it interesting, the definition of ADU, why it's so highly technical and kind of interesting, is in our regulations, in the statute, it requires a special permit for more than one ADU. It requires it. Not for whatever the protected use ADU is. That's always going to be by right. But if that's already constructed, the next one, the next unit is not protected use, and it must be by special permit. But if you zone something for something that is not a protected use ADU, so like 901 square feet, then it doesn't meet the definition of an ADU under 40A, and you don't require a special permit for it, right? Highly technical.
Okay. Okay. So if the bylaw is different from the state rule around 900 square feet, then that doesn't count as one of the protected ADUs for purposes of the law?
Not quite. So we gave permission in the regs. We built in permission for a municipality to be more permissive for protected use
More
ADUs. We're
generous.
saying, yeah,
Okay.
if you want to be more generous and still consider it a protected use ADU, we'll allow that. And that's totally at the discretion of a municipality.
Okay.
But, and so you can be more permissive, but you're also allowed to provide for other types of dwelling units, right? Like you can provide for something, a 1,200 square foot tertiary unit. I think they do that on the Cape, right? Nantucket offers secondary and tertiary units. So they're trying to figure out how to fit the protected use ADU into their existing structure. And I think their tertiary units actually do match the definition pretty closely with a small tweak. So that's the way they'll likely go. But you're free to allow many units on your lot as possible. If
Okay.
the protected use, you can be as generous as you want. If it meets the definition of an ADU though, and it's the second one, it requires a special permit. If it doesn't meet the definition, you can do it however you would like. And it's very
Okay.
important. It's very important when you do the zoning to be clear about what your intentions are.
Mhm.
Because what we've also seen is there's now been like 5 or 6 MLU decisions where municipalities have said, okay, protected use is 900 square feet or half the size, which is less. But we're also going to offer a special permit for a unit to go up to 1,200 square feet.
Yeah,
Probably intended to be a protected use ADU, still protected. But
Yeah.
they failed to say that in their zoning. So is that a protected use ADU? You trying to be more generous? And the AGO seems inclined to allow you to use things like special permits or discretionary waivers for things that you're not required, for that more generous portion, for things you're not required to do by law. But you have to be specific, right? Because if someone uses a special permit, builds a 1,200 square foot ADU, and it's not a protected use ADU, then they have the right to still build a protected use ADU, that third unit by right, right? So you have to be specific in your zoning what you intend.
that's a really, people may not remember what you just said, but what they
Sorry.
should take away from this is if you get to the point where you're going to be more generous on the size limitation for your ADU and your bylaws, you really need to be in conversation with you guys and or the AG's office to make sure that your experience comes to play in knowing that you need to play through what you just described to us as you don't end up maybe with 3 units on the property because you didn't put that special language in there that this is
Yeah.
intended to be the protected use ADU. We're just allowing it to be bigger than the law requires us to allow, which makes sense for some communities I can think of in our district where you might have a 3,000 square foot home and the owner actually wants to downsize into the ADU and do something else with the main house. And so they may feel like a 900 square foot ADU is too small for their downsizing needs. And in those communities, they may decide that the community wants a larger ADU for the principal owner to downsize to and maybe bring their kids into the front house or rent the front house.
Right.
Moving forward, I've heard a fair
Intention
amount of that.
matters. Yeah.
Intention matters.
Intention matters.
Can I ask a very technical question since, oh, I see we have, nope, we're still waiting for a Q&A.
Claire has been
Um,
monitoring it and answering questions as they come in.
Okay, do we want to let other people know about these? So we have, one of the questions was towns who have not approved MBTA, will residents wanting to move from that town to a town offering ADUs be allowed to apply? Be applied for what? The new AU statute and regulations apply to the entire Commonwealth. So it really doesn't matter whether your town has approved the MBTA bylaw.
No.
Because that's a completely separate bylaw that affects a different provision in 40A.
Also, MBTA communities. So I'm one of the 2 lawyers that has been reviewing all the applications on MBTA communities. I was actually hired in
helpful.
2020 to help. 2021, I was hired by UHLC to help stand up the program. So that's was my main job for a long time until I was helpfully asked to help with ADUs.
Which is a little
and
more fun right now.
it's so much more fun. But I like MBTA communities too. But that's a multifamily district as well. So where multifamily has to be allowed by right. So the ADU law applies to all municipalities in the Commonwealth except for Boston because they are not controlled by 40A. They have their own operating statute. And it only applies to single family residential zoning districts. That is the only reference to single family in the law. The type of district where an ADU would be appropriate. And an MBTA community district is not going to be a single family residential zoning district. The underlying zoning, like if it's built over a commercial district, for example, that allows single family by special permit, which is common, that commercial district is a single family residential zoning district under the law. And this law applies. You would be able to build ADUs in that district, right? But not within the MBTA district itself.
Not under
not
that
under that
zoning.
zoning.
Right.
Right.
You'd have to look for the fact that the zone would allow single family.
Mhm.
So now we have Siren from buildex.com. We found some towns are more difficult than others when we go for permits to build. Claire has invited you to share with her directly. If you find that some towns are being more difficult to build, reach out to EOHLC, to Claire, and find out if they're following the rules, right? That there are rules that apply across the Commonwealth. So we need to find that out. My other
The AGO
question.
is also tracking that. I'll point out it's a consumer protection issue, right?
Okay.
So the AGO may take up cases as needed in the future if necessary. And I do think that a lot of communities are really just finding their footing, right? It's still early in the process. People are confused, especially where the bylaws have not been amended. There's stuff on the books that doesn't apply, but building commissioners, the people who have to approve your permits, don't always necessarily understand what they're supposed to do with conflicting language. And I mean, there are processes we can go through. As a lawyer, like I would sit down, work out a memo with the planning department about what should apply, what shouldn't, and give that to the commissioner, because that's just the law as it is today. That hasn't been done in a lot of places, but I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just early.
Confusing time to have change, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the point is that the more we bring this up, or people bring it up, then the municipalities can find a resource to get help so that they don't get accused of being inconsistent or with the law or inconsistent with different applications. So that can
Right.
actually be a huge help to the community. So when you talked about the development, when Claire talked about the development and pre-development cost, that are part of the money that's available. What do you consider development and pre-development costs? Is that the town cost to maybe extend the sewer line, or is that to an area that's sort of getting a lot of ADU applications, or is that money for the ADU development companies to come in and get money to develop a standard that they use?
So MHP is still very much in the program design phase around like eligibility of what type of development activities will be eligible to be funded through this program. What I can say is that at this time, like everything's on the table, from like feasibility studies to permitting costs, to impact fees, to site plan costs, sewer connection fees, infrastructure related fees, or infrastructure related costs, and then the actual development costs. So I think all of that is being considered. But yeah, we're still very much in the early phases of program design. So yeah, we're taking a very comprehensive look at this. And we're also lucky to speak to our friends over at the City of Boston who have their own ADU financing program, and there's a lot to learn from them on this as well. So we have been having lots of conversations with them as we design this program, but it's very exciting.
Okay, so more to come on the funding piece. Our towns, we do have at least 2 towns in our regional planning area that are not MBTA compliant. Will these be among the grants that are not available to towns that are not MBTA compliant?
So I think what we foresee is a lot of these grants will go to individual property or grants. I don't know what
Okay.
form, I don't know what form these will take. It could be grants, it could be loans. Again, everything
Okay.
is on the table. But these will most likely, the majority of funding will go to individual property owners. And so it won't matter, nothing related to MBTA communities will matter when it comes to this funding.
Okay. And Jason, as you were going through, were there any ideas that came to you that are things that you're hearing from the communities that might be helpful to get on the record right now from EOHLC?
I mean, I think in most of my sort of interactions, specifically with property owners who are interested and really excited about the ADU law, is just the cost. Design and development of ADUs is super cost prohibitive. And so if you're a senior homeowner who's looking to downsize and build an ADU, or someone who's looking to build an ADU maybe for a child who might be of lower income sort of status. The cost can be prohibitive, so it's great to hear that there are other sort of products coming out maybe to help sort of subsidize or make that affordability standard maybe a little less for folks, because it's almost like you have to take out a second mortgage in order to build an ADU. And so no, it's just great to hear that there's products that are becoming available to maybe help provide some financial relief for folks who are looking to take advantage of ADUs.
Yeah, and we're very aware of this, and we're working with the AGO also around consumer protection, because we know that, especially if it's a property owner that's looking at ADUs for what's best for their family, for example, can be an emotional decision, and we have heard of instances with contractors promising things that aren't realistic, for example. So we're part of these ADU incentives, and this whole program will really also focus on the community education standpoint. And also, what's interesting about ADUs is if you're a property owner and you plan to rent out the property, you're a landlord. So doing, landlord training and offering education around that. So taking a comprehensive look at what ADU development actually means for property owners, as well as how difficult it is at this point in the current, interest rate environment, as well as just how much any housing construction is, especially in the States. So we're very, very much aware, and we're excited about these new financing opportunities.
And then
We're
quickly
also-
sorry, you go, Roy.
Go ahead, Roy.
Sorry, we're also thinking more like thinking through modular construction. That it was very important. We learned from other states to protect modular construction, because it you can cut the cost down by like a quarter of the cost, right? So there are places, we're not going to get it quite that far. In California, you just don't need all the insulation. There's a lot of modular constructed units that work in warm environments that won't work here. But in California, you can get it down to under $100,000 for an ADU if you just buy one and just put it on a foundation. And some of them are quite beautiful, actually. I think Backyard ADUs is building ADUs in Massachusetts, and they're using a modular construction design. They have offsite partners that are building them in pieces. They're constructed modularly in a factory and then installed. And that kind of development is just much more cost effective. So figuring out though I think identifying companies that are offering products that work in Massachusetts, that's the real challenge. And I'm hoping in a year or so, maybe we'll have some more resources for people to look into. So I hope people aren't discouraged and go away forever, but I think it's important to keep an eye on this as it develops, because we might be able to chip away at some of the cost.
I'm wondering if you guys are working at all with the agency that works with the councils on aging. Because I would see that this option and helping our seniors or people who are, now I realize at 60 years old, I now count as being available, I'm eligible for COA services. But so they're trying to target younger people like myself with information and conversations around options for downsizing. And I just wonder if you guys are working with that agency, or, both when you're thinking about these grant or loan programs and when you're thinking about kind of what people are looking for in terms of resources.
So we have partners over at the Massachusetts Office on Disability. And then we also we have, I forget her actual title, but basically she leads fair housing in our office. And we've had multiple calls sort of talking about issues of accessibility. We also meet with property owners sometimes around questions of ADUs and accessibility, especially if there's particular challenges where it comes to space and under 900 square feet, and and building a truly accessible unit. Like for example, it's pretty difficult to build a ADA compliant accessible ADU that has more than one bedroom. It may be able to be done, but that is quite attractive to some folks because they'd like the extra bedroom to age in place and possibly have a living caregiver. So we're thinking through all of these issues, but we do know that ADUs are an extremely exciting potential model for aging in place, caregiving. There's also there's a few different organizations that are interested in piloting this model and financing a few different ADUs in communities with seniors and particularly lower income seniors, and looking at getting a caregiver on their lot and using it as a model to drive future development with seniors in ADUs. So it's an exciting opportunity, but as Jason was saying, these are very expensive. So wanting to also communicate that effectively to property owners, because it's a very exciting prospect, but they're also very expensive to build. So finding that balance and also offering help at the state level.
So I see that one of our commenters, Darlene Regan, is she's the director of the Council on Aging in Halifax, one of our communities. And she's saying that she would love to have a keynote speaker come to Halifax to talk about ADUs. So Jason is offering to help her out on that. And if there are other communities that are similarly situated, reach out to Jason. And let's see what we can do to get people at every level thinking and talking about this. I also have a very technical question, which is if you're doing a bylaw change to come up with your local bylaw, is this a 50% standard for passing the bylaw, or is it still a supermajority needed? Because does it count as a multifamily? I think the 50% is for multifamily, if I'm remembering correctly, but I didn't look it up before today.
This is a very good question. But there's actually accessory dwelling units are mentioned in the quantum of vote section. This is the kind of question I have to look up every time because we don't deal with
It's
it
not
very
just
often.
me, okay. But I'm
So
thinking if we have
number
planners on
three-
board, they would know.
So I'm just looking. So we have a quantum of vote website. You just Google quantum of vote, it pops right up. But number 3 on the list. So under the newly amended section 5, you only need a majority vote if it, under number 3, allows accessory dwelling units either within the principal dwelling or within a detached structure on the same lot by right. So my read would be a simple majority vote for protected use ADU bylaw.
That's
Okay.
we actually have an
We
FAQ.
don't make that decision though. Your legal counsel will work with you to make the decision, but it
We have
would
an
appear
FAQ
that way.
We have an FAQ on this, Roy, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I just popped that language in the chat, but it's in alignment with what you said. So simple majority, unless there may be certain circumstances where you're establishing protected use ADU under a more permissible definition that may require a supermajority.
That's that technical definition. I don't know that the AGO agrees with that, which is why it says may. I think it was an open question. If you are like me and you take a very strict, hyper technical read of the statute, ADUs are defined as 900 square feet or less or half the size. We gave permission to be more permissive because we wanted to give flexibility to municipalities, but the law on threshold of quantum of vote is ADU as defined by 40A. 900 square feet or less. So if you're trying to allow protected use ADUs at 1,200 square feet, it's not clear if you can avail yourself of the simple majority. I do think that the AGO has approved bylaws by simple majority though for more permissive ADUs. But you would need to contact the AGO or check the MOU decisions to find out sort of where the law stands on that. They are very concerned with making sure that you have not an absurd result, right? That the law is consistently applied. And so, if the ADU is defined differently, they want to make sure that the law is just consistently applied. And that's why there might be a difference of view sometimes.
And I only bring that up as a technical question because I know that some towns will be thinking about, do we become more permissive? How difficult will that be to pass in our specific town? So I wanted to get that on the record here, at least people
Yeah.
thinking about it. We have an anonymous attendee who says, when will we have more information regarding the availability of grants for residents, and where can we direct them to look for this information? Claire says it's coming soon. mass.gov/ADU is going to be the place where you can keep up with all the changes as they come, right, Claire?
Yeah, I think I can. I would check back very soon. I think there will be more information very soon. That's all I can say. I can't say when, but very soon.
So check back weekly?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, check back weekly. That seems like a good standard. Particularly if you're in this field, if you're working on these issues, if you care enough to get to this point in this webinar, then I think you are. And so check back on that website regularly. I see it's coming up to 1:57, so we just have a couple more minutes of your time. Jason, is there anything you want to add? And I'll give Claire and Roy a chance to sort of close out.
Yeah, two quick things. So first, I think, just context. The point of contact for ADUs is going to be different and vary depending on the municipality. So for some municipalities, that might be the planning department. For others, that might be the building department. And so just making sure that folks know when you're going through the process, who that main point of contact is for that. And then just to put in a quick plug, on Thursday, December 4th at 1 p.m., we're going to have a follow-up session to this one. So since this session focused on the rules and regulations of the ADU law, we're going to have a part 2, which will have guests, BuildX, who's an ADU developer based out of Carver. We're going to have banking institutions, Cape Cod 5 Bank and Northeastern Savings Bank, talking about ADU financing products that they might have available for folks. And then we're going to have Spencer Dancause, who's the town planner for Plymouth, who has sort of the most ADU applications within the OCPC region, talk about sort of what that process has been like and what they've been doing to support ADUs from a municipal standpoint.
Wait,
That
you
just
say-
reminded me.
I
Oh,
I
Go
just
ahead.
How many?
think Plymouth might be #1 in the whole Commonwealth. Don't quote me on that, but I think
Do you know
they're
what the number is?
I think it's 30.
yeah,
30.
pretty high. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that we never updated the number, right? So the law was anticipated to result in around 10,000 protected ADUs in the Commonwealth. That number was created before we began the process of writing the regulations. And it was based off some assumptions, like an assumption that it would only apply to single family homes in the Commonwealth, which only account for about half the principal dwellings in the Commonwealth.
Oh.
So if you change the assumptions, the number changes as well. So I don't think that this has been updated. So the number is going to be significantly higher, I'm suspecting.
Yeah,
okay.
I just
Um,
listened
yeah.
press release from our data collection, and Plymouth had the most ADU applications.
Yep, Plymouth
with-
has 32 applications, 12 detached and 20 attached/interior from the OHLC website.
Very cool.
Great.
Okay. And I guess the last thing is, Claire, Roy, is there anything else you want to say before we let you guys off the hook?
No, but thank you so much for having us. I didn't know that this webinar was happening. So if you don't mind, Jason, if you could send me that info, I'd love just to listen in. And we are just so thrilled to have been here today. And if anyone has any additional questions, you can always email me at claire.morehouse@mass.gov. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all
Bye.
very much. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.